Right, Brooke, thank you very much. Let's bring in forensic expert Joseph Scott Morgan. Joseph, from a forensic perspective, what questions do you still need answers to?
Well, obviously, I'm going to want to know more information about how this individual got into the home in order to perpetrate this crime. You're talking about a multiple homicide event involving a sharp force injury. I'm not saying that these don't happen, but, in the whole grand scheme of things, when you talk about multiple homicides, these are kind of rare. So I think the point at which they entered, some people have mentioned that it might actually be the sliding glass door. Maybe that was left unsecured. Maybe the killer waited in the darkness until he saw the lights go out and then made his way into the residence. And that might explain the fact that the two individuals down below in that first floor area were unharmed, that essentially systematically may have gone through the second floor and then up into the third. But again, a lot of this is still dependent upon the information they're developing inside of the residence relative to blood and trace evidence.
Yeah, police are talking to people that may have some information. They're collecting surveillance footage, but a lot of people say that solving this crime really could come down to the forensics, the evidence left behind at the crime scene. And you spoke to Fox News Digital recently, and you said that this is a very complicated case given the level of blood left behind. What do you mean by that?
Well, what it comes down to is, as I mentioned, you had 4 individuals who sustained sharp force injuries. So what happens with this is that you have individuals that you have a scene that involves what's referred to as commingled samples. So just imagine in your mind, as horrible as it is, that the first victim was stabbed, obviously multiple times probably, and then the same instrument was used in the next one, and then so forth and so on. So you have this commingling of biological materials that are together. Now, the upside of that, I think, is that if you can determine which one of these individuals may have had the least amount of biological sample from the other individuals, that might give you an indication as to who was attacked first. But it's going to be a long process as they attempt to kind of unravel these commingled samples in order to get in there to examine for DNA. And a very curious thing here is that when you have sharp force injuries like this, many times, because it's in a fevered kind of posture when it comes to these attackers, many times they'll actually injure themselves. So they could have biological sample that's mixed up with the victims as well.
Wow. Meantime, we are following this breaking news out of Virginia this morning, where a shooter opened fire in a Chesapeake Walmart. We're told there are multiple fatalities, including the shooter. What is happening on scene right now, in your experience, having responded to scenes presumably like this, following in the moments and hours immediately after it occurs? What are forensics teams doing right now?
Well, obviously the scene has been completely locked down and secured, and make no bones about it. Yes, it's said that the shooter is now neutralized. This is still a multiple homicide investigation. They're going to painstakingly go over every inch of this scene. There's going to be multiple spent bits of ammunition or brass at the scene. Those are going to have to be documented, collected. For those individuals that unfortunately died there at the scene, those bodies will be examined in place. You're going to get relationships between where the shooter was firing from and where the individuals finally came to rest. And all of that, it's about relationship, where they were when this occurred, and maybe, just maybe in some way, this is going to go back and help the public and help the authorities, and certainly most importantly the families, understand what exactly happened.
Yeah, there are still so many unanswered questions to this one, as it's still a breaking situation. But you do think that forensics teams are on the ground. They're looking at possibly the placement of bodies. We already heard reports that there was one body that was in the front of the store. So given that, could it have been that the shooter in this case came into the store shooting, or possibly was trying to maybe even shoot people down as they were fleeing?
Right, and so the idea here is to, the scene for a moment at least is frozen in time. And so what they have to do is try to assess the movement and the progression of the shooter as they went through firing this weapon, taking aim. Did they chase anybody down? Was somebody, essentially down on their knees begging for their life and they were, essentially executed in place? Or was somebody running away? And all of that gives you an idea as to what happened at that moment in time. The best they can do is document, because you only get one shot at this.
Joseph Scott Morgan, appreciate you jumping in on that Walmart shooting and obviously the situation in Idaho. We appreciate all your insight this morning. Thank you, sir.